Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Mayo. Steve, welcome.
Good afternoon, David. How are you?
We're into the fall.
We're into the fall. There's a chill in the air, so it is a little bit of a change.
And people who've been watching through the summer are going to notice another change. There are only 2 seats on the set this month.
Oh, okay. That's true.
We've been going through a series
right.
of interviews.
Right.
But what we're going to talk about today, because this is going to be coming up in November town meeting, which is November 18th.
November 18th.
And that's all we're going to say is because
That's all we're going to say.
It's November 18th.
Yeah.
But the thing that's coming up, and we've been talking about this in Wakefield and Linfield for a number of years now, is the Rail to Trail project.
Exactly.
To convert the old main line to a bike and pedestrian-friendly 4-mile trail.
And I would say cross-country skiing maybe in the winter as well. So we'll add that in there too.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of this project, because that track now has been abandoned for about a decade.
A decade, maybe a little bit more. I was trying to think of that the other day, and I was trying to talk with some of my kids. You know, my oldest is 31, and he was saying when he remembered some trains coming through, but I think it was remembering trains on what I would call a B&M line. So, but I think it has been probably 15 years anyway, maybe more. So anyways, like many communities, you know, you have an abandoned rail. We'll say abandoned because they never really abandoned it, and we'll talk about that maybe at the end, how they never really abandoned it. And no, was really came from a local activist group. A lot of bikers, Dot Helpin in particular comes to mind, former selectman Kevin Scott, and really pushing for what can we do to have a rail trail like they have down the Cape, like they have in Lexington, and they're wonderful. I've been on a number with my family, and you know it's great whether you're walking, whether you're biking, you know, whether you're strolling, what have you, whether you're skateboarding. They really are a lot of fun. So we kind of looked around, and the first thing, you know, we need to do is say, A, do we have an abandoned line? And abandoned will always be in quotations for the audience at home, which we did. B, would the MBTA or whatever entity is in charge of them, of the real estate, be interested? And the answer is yes. So how do we go about making, and how do we get the funding to do it? So through Mass DOT, which is really a federal pass-through for money like this. There is money to develop rail trails. When I say develop, there's money really for the construction of the rail trail. Not any money really for the design. The design falls on the community, and they want to make sure the community has skin in the game.
Sure.
So luckily, back years ago, our state delegation at the time, including Senator Richard Desai, was able to get a $500,000 grant in a bond bill at the state level, which was actually released. And we used that money to design, or to start the design process of a rail trail. That rail trail included the line from the junction in Wakefield, and we know where the junction is. For those of you at home that may not know where the junction is, think of it as the intersection of Main, North Ave, and Nahant. That's really the junction area.
Yes.
And that would go all the way to the Peabody line in Linfield. It would cross, excuse me, it would start at the junction, it would cross Water Street, cross New Salem Street, cross Salem Street, cross Lowell Street, cross the Reedy Meadow, and some streets in Linfield as well. Kind of go behind their high school, what have you.
2 streets in Linfield.
2 streets in Linfield, not as many as in Wakefield, although there is the Reedy Meadow portion. So we got the grant money. Went out to bid to hire an engineer to do this, and there's a number of engineers that do this. Had some fits and starts and with the engineering, mainly because the lead engineer tragically died in the beginning process of this. So we had to kind of regroup there, which we did, and utilize that money to get to what's called basically a 25% design hearing. And basically what that is they will go and they being the engineers, will do a number of meetings, I think starting in 2014, with residents to talk about the line, what people would like on the rail trail, kind of lay that out and see, does this work in a horizontal way
Mm-hmm.
And will that work, and will that be allowed by Mass DOT? So, it takes a long time to get these things done. It takes a long time to get in there. We also struggled for a couple of years how to cross the Reedy Meadow. While the rail trail enjoyed unanimous support basically in Wakefield, not so much so in Linfield, but Linfield is coming along now and
Right.
is seeing the values of it.
Didn't they have a vote recently?
They just had a vote
that
recently.
passed by one.
That was a while ago. It passed by
Yeah.
one vote to proceed, but their latest vote, which was to actually put the extra money in to complete the design, passed almost 2-1 at the
Excellent.
town meeting.
Yeah.
So that was great. So I think it's people are seeing the value of this. But there were many meetings over the years, many focus groups, and many interactive meetings where there were different stations. You talk about the street crossings. You might talk about parking. Talk about screening. Talk about Reedy Meadow. Talking about amenities along the way. So that kind of what happened for the last couple of years, and it culminated in a DOT hearing, Department of Transportation hearing, which we did have in Linfield jointly for both towns. This is a joint project, which probably was why we got some money from the state to cover it, because most times it's like each town does their own does their own thing as part of an overall project. So on November 18th at November town meeting, we will have a article to fund the remainder of the design, which is a total of about $700,000 split evenly between the two towns. So we're looking for about $350,000 to handle that. When you see these rail trails in other towns, now one just occurred in, I think, Woburn, Winchester, Stoneham. I think they call it the Tri-City Trail or Tri-Town Trail or what have you. That has come to great acclaim and people are really enjoying it. I think we'll see that people really enjoy this here as well. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we are.
Well, and also, if I understand this correctly, this is really a part of a larger trail that's another 30 miles from the Peabody border on, called the Boston Trail?
Yes, what they're trying to do, and this is what's really interesting, is that Mass DOT is really trying to connect all of these trails. So you could hopefully someday get, bike-friendly accommodations all the way from Boston all the way up to Newburyport. And this one would link up through Peabody, going up through Topsfield, that area, Danvers, Topsfield, up through, eventually through Newburyport. Getting to Boston is kind of, there's ways to do that. It might be a little bit more problematic right now. May entail some overland routes. But, that is the vision at the end, is, how cool it would be able to take your bike and maybe even ride it to Oak Grove safely on a rail trail, and then put your bike on the rack there and go into Boston on the commuter rail, or take your bike all the way in. But that is Mass DOT's goal, is to link all of these areas to make it really a recreational mecca and what have you. So they are leaning on that and working on that.
Now, some of the other issues that have had to be overcome on this, one is the right of way, and that one's a complex issue in and of itself.
Yeah, it is very complex because, like I said before, the MBTA never really abandons it. So we will never really own the right of way as a town or as towns. What we will enter into is a 99-year lease, and that's just the way it is with the MBTA. And the MBTA will have a 2-year window if they want to take it back, which I can't imagine that ever happening, but they do maintain that in there. And so that's basically in a boilerplate, position. Our position here in Wakefield is, and I think it's in Linfield as well, and luckily we share the same town council, is that we will sign that lease and make that effective the day we put a shovel into the ground and start the actual construction. So in that will come, we'll have to maintain the area, of course. And we would also have to purchase environmental insurance. There was a change in the state law, so we'd have to purchase that for 5 years. And that might be a total of 50, 60 grand. Small price to pay for something that is really going to keep things going. So that's where we are. Interestingly enough, on our portion of the rail trail, and although this is not part of the trail, so to speak, is that a portion of this is going to be built ahead of time. And that is coming from the junction all the way to Salem Street, which is where National Grid's power line is, underground power line, electric power line is going to go through. And that'll be adjacent to the rail trail right-of-way, which National Grid is going to pave that whole area to the standards of Mass DOT for rail trails. So although all the amenities won't be there with the screenings and the nice, maybe plantings and things like that, we will have a pathway probably a year or two earlier than the whole trail would be done.
Cool.
So that's kind of a cool thing. And I was thinking of that, for kids actually walking from that area of school to the Galvin, that's a straight shot right through and with just a couple of crossings. So that'll be something that'll be pretty cool when that goes through.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it'll add to the attraction of Wakefield between the lake and the rail trail with the downtown in the middle.
Right. And then the whole downtown project is part of that is bike routes that will be connecting to the rail trail, to the downtown, to the lake. So we are looking at that connection. And is there a way to get overland right now with some shed or something to Stoneham and connect up with that rail trail there, which will then go through towards Winchester and towards that way. So there is a kind of a master plan, at least in my mind, of how this would all fit together eventually. So it is an interesting dynamic.
What are the challenges that we have yet to overcome to make this possible?
Well, there's the funding at town meeting, although I think there's very broad support for that, but you never know. That we have an open town meeting, you never know what can happen.
Right.
The challenges are, as you go through the rail trail and as you go through the existing railway, part of the challenges are people, whether butters, whether on purpose or not knowing, that have maybe made some encroachments onto the railroad right of way. I mean, you have a railway that's been abandoned for a long time, so you can certainly see where some people may have encroached. Along the Wakefield portion of that, it's not so obvious. So it seems to me that there isn't any big issues there.
A lot of that existing rail goes through areas that are, for lack of a better term, wild.
Wild in some areas, but there are some backyards that back up.
Yeah.
When you look at Thistledale Road and some of those Wayland, Vernon Street, you can see some of those that went through there. It goes right by some industrial areas, right at New Salem. So there has been some. There might have been some encroachment, but not permanent structures. So where you really gets dicey is maybe someone expanded their patio or their pool or their cabana or something on that. So that's the challenge number one. Challenge number two is expanding out of the railway itself. Are there areas, particularly at crossings, where there needs to be a widening outside of the footprint of the rail trail? So would there be some public takings? So takings from actual, a corner here, a corner there, like we do. I don't want the public to get upset about that, because that happens all the time in these projects.
Right.
In fact, we have an omnibus article where it's $1. We have a year to take a corner of something to make things work, and happens all the time. I think that's minimal again on this project, at least on the Wakefield side. But I don't know. I mean, that's because I'm more familiar with it. Another potential are the environmental impacts. Going through Reedy Meadow, which has some wonderful wildlife, some wonderful birds.
Right.
There could be some perceived disturbances. What I would say is that they put these rail trails everywhere through salt marshes and what have you.
Right.
There was an existing rail bed that has gone through Reedy Meadow. The tracks are still there. They may have been buried a little bit, but they are still there.
Well, because originally that line was all the way to Portland, Maine.
Exactly. So it was used for that already.
Sure.
And there wasn't just one track, there were two, going both ways. So pretty wide expanse. That is going to be a built up, kind of a boardwalky kind of thing anyway. So there shouldn't be any areas with that. But, Mass DOT has gone through this in a number of places where They certainly have been able to respect the environmental issues and build the rail trail. So that's an issue that is expected, but I think will be overcome through local permitting, what have you. There are issues in crossings, and we really want to make sure that those crossings are very safe. And we mentioned this a few more in Wakefield. You know, New Salem, Water, Salem, Lowell. Trying to think if there's another one down. I don't think
there's
so.
one down a little further, according to the list.
Forester, maybe Forester.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but let's see.
So that, excuse me, been fighting this for a month. So that could be a little bit not problematic. It's just we have to make sure it's safe.
Yep.
Make sure there's notification for vehicular drives that the pedestrians are safe.
Yep.
When they go through. So that's an issue. The other issue is that whenever you are changing, you know, near an abutter, there can be some trepidation.
Right.
So one thing that we will be looking at is how do we screen from abutters? You know, what kind of fencing?
So neither party can see the other.
So there is some privacy.
As they pass by.
Now, I will tell you that some people don't want screening.
Yeah.
They want to be able to have full access to the trail.
Yeah.
I know that it was kind of interesting when we had the 25% design hearing in Reading. One person got up, very concerned with screening. The very next person that got up says, I don't want any screening. I want to be able to go right onto that trail from my yard. So I thought that was some kind of an interesting dynamics like anything else. But that is part and parcel of the design and part and parcel of the project that is paid for through the Mass DOT on their transportation program or the TIP program. So there will be, you know, meetings to talk about that and public hearings to talk about the screening, what it will be. It can't be, you know, someone's going to get a gold-plated fence here, and then we're going to have a wrought iron black fence here, and then a wooden picket fence here. There'll be some uniformity, but it can also be softened with plantings and what have you through it. So those are the kind of things that we'll be looking to the public for, to talk about what do you want there and what's going on.
Yeah.
Another aspect of these is parking. People will actually drive with their bikes to the rail trail, which I guess is what happens. I guess that's what I've done in my day and when I've gone. And so that's something that we'll be looking at too. Now the parking area behind the old headquarters, the old depot down there, that and there are cars parking there now where we have kind of reclaimed it a little bit to make it a little bit better for the public. That area as well is going to be a parking area. So there will be parking there and it'll be a finished parking lot. It's part of the project. Up right across from the Galvin, there will be some additional parking there put in across the street there. So those are things that will happen because, again, I think there are people that have been concerned, and I don't blame them, about additional spillover parking in the neighborhoods.
Yep.
I don't see it where the trail is because there really aren't spots for people to park in those neighborhoods as you go through where you would access it.
Right.
So, but you know what I found over the years that people will park wherever they want, so it doesn't matter.
Mean that people won't try.
Yeah. So I think that'll be another thing that we will be considering. But it's been a fun project and it's been a long project. And I was thinking about this the other day. Is that, you know, these rail trails take a long time, and really the average is around 10 years. So we're a little bit below average in time right now.
Well, but by the time it's done,
we'll be right about
average. Yeah. The project schedule in the presentation from earlier this year, the design public hearing was this last spring.
Yep.
That's completed. The completion of design permitting and row process is for spring, summer of 2021.
Yeah.
So that's a year and a half away.
Right, and then construction.
And then construction doesn't even start until the spring of 2022. Right. So this is not something people are going to see imminently.
No, it's not going to be there next week or next year.
Yeah.
But it will be there.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it will be there. And I think it's one of the nicer projects we've had. And so I know that people people are not patient about getting things done, and I get that. Neither am I. But this is coming. It's happening, and I think it'll be a great economic and recreational benefit to the community. So I'm pretty happy about it.
Now, looking ahead to when it's completed and keeping in mind the current downtown design project, which is ongoing right now too and has its own controversies, do you foresee any further development with regard to that, to handling cyclists and such who may come down from the northern part of the trail and maybe, go to a restaurant in town or go to one of the shops or whatever?
Yes, because part of the Envision project for the downtown does include bike lanes getting towards the rail trail, particularly down Water Street.
But what about bike parking?
Well, that'll certainly be part of it. There'll be bike parking at both locations and in our downtown too. Mm-hmm. We should have bike parking now in our downtown. Mm-hmm. We have some, not enough. Things are changing. I mean, let's face it. The climate is changing. We have to find different and better ways to get around. And I put myself at the top of the list. Walk to work, take a bike to work, do things like that. We don't have to always, automatically hop in the car and drive 2 miles. Right. There's other ways to do it. Public transportation as well. So I think as we go forward with this, you're going to see a lot more of those sort of crossover, using the rail trail to come back to the downtown. Maybe more businesses would open up as more cyclists and people come. Mm-hmm. Would love to see the old bike shop back, Scan Sport Shack. We had this town had 2 or 3 bike shops.
We did.
In our heyday growing up.
At one point, we had one in Greenwood at the old
Winters. I think was in
Winters
Greenwood.
was at the corner of the block in Greenwood.
Yeah.
Where the nail salon is now. You had Schwinn on Albion Street. You had Wheeler's downtown.
Wheeler's downtown. So we had 3 bike shops in Wakefield. Wouldn't that be great to have one? Mm-hmm. Get one back. A reason to come here and buy a bike or a skateboard and what have you. So I think that, and when you look at these other rail trails, there is some economic development that spawns off of it. Now, this rail trail will go by Four Corners. Okay, mm-hmm. I can see those businesses in Four Corners maybe getting a little upgrade too. Let's stop here and and use some of those businesses. So, and certainly to the downtown. So.
There are sub shops there. There's an ice cream store there, Melitharb's, and others.
So I can really see that all molding together. So it's another part of our arsenal, I guess, to make Wakefield more livable, more economically vibrant. And it's quite a group. I'll tell you, the engineers, World Tech Engineering has done a really good job with this, in my opinion. They have done a number of these trails, and they seem to be very in tune with Mass DOT, which is very helpful to us. So I'm very happy about that.
So exactly what can people look forward to at town meeting?
Well, at town meeting, there will be an article. I'm going to say it's going to be Article 2, 3, or 4. I forget which one. And it will be to request $350,000 to fund the design of the rail trail, to take it from 25% design to basically where it's shovel ready.
Right.
Okay. And again, Mass DOT, the state wants the cities and towns to have skin in the game. Mm-hmm. Right now, we basically have none other than our time.
Right.
So that is we need to put some money in there. Now there is a bond bill. We always try to get a bond bill, right, at the state to try to get some money towards this. That has not been acted on yet. Will not be acted on, I believe, prior to our town meeting. But just because something's appropriated doesn't mean it has to be spent.
Right.
And I think that Town of Wakefield has been very good about that over the years. So we'll keep pushing for that. If we somehow get $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, guess what? We don't have to spend what we appropriated, and it would roll back into free cash. So this can happen. Can happen.
So for all the supporters out there, if you're really interested in seeing the rail trail come to pass, come down on November 18th and participate in the discussion and in the vote to move it one step
so
further.
It's almost 4.5 miles,
Mm-hmm.
this section of it. And I think that when you go through the Reedy Meadows section, when you come through some of that, is going to be spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
And, the thought there is when it's designed that there will be some, I'll say, what they say, scenic lookout spots, or some areas where it'll be a little bit wider on the track there that you can actually see and maybe do some bird watching or see some of the animals in there.
Sure.
So that'll be a pretty interesting part of the trail. And I think that people are going to love it. And I wasn't being facetious about the snowshoeing and the cross-country skiing, because the rail trail is not going to be plowed in the winter. Okay, it's not going to be salted. It's not going to be plowed. It is a rail trail to be used when the snow melts on its own. But probably a pretty cool place to go cross-country skiing.
Except for the intersections.
Okay? But you know what?
They're going to plow those.
Right, they will. Well, hopefully. Depends on the budget. We don't want to hear about it. Right now, we have no snow and ice overdraft for this year, so I'm happy. As of yet. It might change tonight.
Well, no, just rain and wind for tonight. Right. But this is a great project. It's something that will further enhance the town. It will further bring people to the town who maybe want those sorts of services available to them, which aren't right now except for biking around the lake or biking through Breakheart, which in itself has its own dangers because that road hasn't been kept up for
it's
many years.
It's very hilly.
Yeah. Well, the hills are the fun part, but this will be a great addition to Lake Quannapowitt, to some of the other things that are available in town already.
And I forget the numbers. The Mass DOT is going to be showing usage, rail trail usage, and how many people actually use these trails a day by counters. And it is staggering. It's a lot more than you would think. Thousands of people use like the Linfield Minuteman Rail Trail a day. And that's pretty significant. I mean, if you could get a few hundred to use this, and then all of a sudden you get a few that go downtown and say, geez, what a great restaurant, maybe I'll come back with my family at night. Some of the specialty shops down there as well. So there is a whole multiplier effect. So it's not just a trail, but it's everything that comes out of it. So it is an exciting project, and a lot of people have worked very hard on this, very passionately, and it is coming eventually.
So please join us Monday, November 18th, 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
for regular town meeting. And come and have your say, not just on this, as important as it is, but the other articles as well that are coming up.
Exactly.
Remember, this is the way for you to govern the town as part of the town.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll see you next month.